Nothing can stop me. I'm all the way up. All the way up. I'm all the way up. I'm all the way up.
Good morning, Vietnam.
Oh, you took it from me. Well, I'm Meyer Dalal.
Ronan Fishman.
Jason Mantione.
And
Alan Hastings.
Alan Hastings.
I'm not happy with Alan right now.
So we have the Friday roundup going over the economic data. This week was a big week in economic data. And then we're doing our funding of the week, which was one that was epic. So what are we going to discuss, Alan, here? Let's see the topics that we're going to go over.
Yeah, I think today we're going to touch on all the big data that came out this week. We're going to go through the Case-Shiller consumer confidence and job openings numbers, the housing appreciation data, the GDP, ADP, those numbers as well. So the job market, jobless claims, payroll, unemployment. And then I think we should round it out just by talking about what the opportunities are in today's market. So if we get all the figures in front of us, how can we utilize that?
All right, good. So let's start straight off with the Case-Shiller Price Index. So what is the Case-Shiller Price Index? Basically, it is an average of what's happening over the prior month period of all of the appreciation that occurs throughout the market as a whole. So it looks at the major cities in the major market areas as well as, individual cities in the smaller market areas and does an average appreciation growth. And that came in 4.3% increase in the month of February, year over year.
That's real estate market, right?
That's real estate market. And that's the 22nd consecutive month of an increase. We're on pace for a higher year over year return than previous year.
Wow. So anyone trying to time the market,
Their
22
timing is
months
wrong.
behind.
That's right. Their timing is wrong.
So a lot of people have been wrong.
But imagine this. We have persistently still high interest rates. We have affordability issues. We have inventory shortage, but the inventory has started to pick up. We were at 1.6, 1.8 months. Now we're at an average of 3.2. A healthy market is 6 months. So we're severely still under, but yet we have 4.3% increase. So for those of you that are looking at this and saying, I should wait because prices are overpriced. I mean, I had a conversation literally yesterday with a family friend who called me up, who saw me on the Instagram video. And we just started doing a lot of this stuff.
By the way, have you seen how Go Mbank's Instagram page is blowing up?
It's from Ziv the Watch Guy.
Yeah.
It's the craziest thing. I mean, our page, by the way, is Go Mbank. So if you guys want to take a look at it, and I know Ziv for 10 years. He's a friend of mine. And when he first started doing it, I know I'm getting off track, but I said to him, you're really crazy. You're going to actually go and just talk to random people. And literally, that's all he does. We were sitting for dinner for 2 hours. When I tell you 25 people came up to him, hey, you're Ziv the Watch Guy. Hey, can you analyze this watch? And the guy's like, he knows every single watch make and model. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen.
That's so amazing.
He'd be like, oh, yeah. Oh, that's the model X532 quartz. And I'm like, he's like, Mario, don't you know it? I'm like, yeah, sure. So in any event, so this family member called me and he says to me, Meyer, I have a predicament. Is it the interest rates or the prices? I said, it's neither. You have to buy now. He said, what do you mean? He said, the prices are too high and I'm going to wait for them to come back to pre-COVID levels. I said, you're never going to buy then. He said, why? I said, because my opinion, I told him exactly this. I said, Case-Shiller just came out. You have 22 months of consecutive growth. Where are you seeing a decline? And where are you buying? In Miami, where still people are moving to. There's job growth. There's political stability. Everything that's good. You think it's just going to drop because it's overpriced?
So I'll tell you something interesting. There's two parts on that. My real estate background, when somebody in real estate tells them something like that, they think they're selling. But if their uncle, who's, doing whatever they're doing for their career, came to them and said, you should wait for the market. It's going to go down. They'll listen to that because they're not selling them anything. They have no vested interest. And then the other point to that is that you see people advertising, like, if it bleeds, it leads, especially in social media and news. So they'll like, this jurisdiction is down 30%. There's vacant homes everywhere. Prices are dropping. They're like, ha, I told you so. As if the market is just one giant organism that all works together. You walk across the street sometimes at a school zone better than the other one, and that house is identical to the one across the street, different zoning, different school, 30% cheaper. So it doesn't work that way. That house is a lifestyle choice, right? So you're dead on what the advice you're giving them.
And I told him, he's like, no, I think I'm going to wait. All right, good. He's like, but I'll call you when I'm ready. I was like, sure.
Yeah, build a
You
time
do that.
machine.
You do that.
It's like
You
Back to
do
the
that.
Future when he had the almanac and he can look at all the scores and you can look back at what happened.
Yeah.
If you can come up with one of those.
But talking about the schools, he went through something similar like that where initially where they were looking in one area, they didn't realize what the school situation was. And coming from New York, you're sort of an insulated. I mean, you want to share a little bit about that whole thing because it really speaks to what you're saying.
What, as far as that we were looking only in certain areas? Yeah. So basically what we did is, my wife did is she found out where were the best schools in the South Florida, East Coast area where we were looking. And it came up as Weston, Parkland, Coral Springs, Boca, and Wellington. Excuse me. So basically what we did is Weston was so my family was moving to Boca. So we wanted to be closer to Boca. So we looked at and we were thinking about Parkland, Coral Springs. Parkland, we know what happened years ago. So kind of had a bad omen with the wife. We weren't going to do the Parkland, Coral Springs area. Boca was just priced out of our range. And I had previously in the early 2000s lived in Wellington. And back then when it was just starting out, we knew it was up and coming. So we looked in the Wellington area and the schools were rated like, I think the one school was rated number 2. And it was really, it was definitely, a better area for us. It's 30 minutes literally down a main strip of highway, which is not a parkway, not an expressway. So it's easy to get to my family's house because we're basically here with my family. They're 25, 30 minutes down the road. So it just worked out great. And because the schools, it just kind of, everything just kind of fell into place. Close to the family, great area, up and coming. They were in Forbes magazine for best schools, best place to live. Anything, if you wanted to similarize from Long Island to Florida, like Wellington was like the top spot to get that like suburban feel.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
but
exactly your point.
But you talk about market factors, the things that drive a market. The most understated one all the time is schools.
Yep.
Second to that becomes employment. So if you're in a concrete jungle, you're in an urban dense kind of population. Like for you guys coming out of New York, you think about in the city in Manhattan, what that's like. Why? Because you can walk to work. Everything's accessible. Downtown core Toronto has the financial district and you have all the banks basically on one intersection, right? If you wanted to buy a condo adjacent to that, you're paying a significant premium. Now you walk another kilometer, or for you Americans, a mile outside of that, you get a significant discount, right? It's really, this is the things that people just don't factor in. They think of a market as this just giant thing, but no, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah,
Ever.
100%. But you know what was interesting with these numbers? You have new hotspots that were created that went up over 6%.
Exactly.
So Atlanta, Charlotte, and Nashville all posted gains of over 6%.
Is that because of affordability?
Is it by migration, affordability, and just that's where people are gravitating to? That's where they want to live.
Gotcha.
I mean, 6% in 1 month is crazy.
That's inflation.
And they were all warmer climate.
Yes, they all tend to be,
Yeah.
along the Sun Belt. I just learned that something new, the Sun Belt states. And the whole thing, the cities, LA is one of them, Alan, Atlanta, Dallas, Houston. So
People don't like the
interesting.
cold anymore.
Yeah, I'm done
Yeah.
with the cold.
Oh,
Well, I just on that, it's the cold, but the health benefits. There's something called SAD. Do you guys hear about this in New York? Because you went for a place that's cold, right? It's
SAD?
called, seasonal seasonal annual depression. That's what it stood for. No, but it's not. It's a medical
true.
term that they
Wow.
during cold. Look, you're locked into your house for some places 6 months out of the year. Although winters are not nearly as cold as I remember them when I was a kid, and I'm not talking about ecological factors, but when you're locked in for 6 months out of the year and you can't really go outside because it's just so bitterly cold, you get depressed.
We
Cabin
have a
fever.
family member. We have a family member in New York. His girlfriend, every fall, as soon as the fall comes, she becomes depressed.
That was me, man.
Breaks up with him, and in the spring she gets back with him, and they're together while the weather's nice. Every year for it's got to be 20 years.
You can't tell me that it doesn't impact.
No, it's a thing.
And how many people are running to a warm? Nobody's going on vacation to a cold climate. I did it once with Iceland. I told my wife I will never go to a cold place on vacation again.
See, but in the winter we were happy. We would like say, okay, now it's hibernation mode. You don't have to see anybody. We do lighting the fire, movies. We did other things, so it's it was.
Yeah, I'm done with cold. So, Alan, talk to us about the
birds.
consumer confidence, because this was an interesting number.
Yeah, so the consumer confidence data came out on Tuesday. Basically, the numbers were expected to be low. Basically, the conference board takes a look at all of it's like self-reported. People kind of give their input on how they feel about the present situation, the expectations, and the future, right? So the present situation index, their figures for the consumer confidence fell by 7.9 points this month to 86. And the expectations index for the future dropped 12 points to 54.4, which is the lowest level since October 2011. And the reason that's important, not just to give you an idea that people are feeling not confident about the current situation and the future, there's a threshold, which is 80, which is a signal for a recession ahead. Basically, this is not a mathematical formula. This is people's feelings. So it's not like a mathematical, this means a recession is coming.
So that's 26 points below.
Correct. This is the signal
recession
of a
threshold.
recession.
So
Yes.
basically, it's everyone's feeling we're going into a recession.
That's how they feel. Correct.
Well, I mean, the housing market is inflationary, like Ronan first pointed out, is like inflation. Now, if you look at the jobs openings, that came in at 8.73 million, which is well below the expectation. And that's definitely not inflationary. That's showing a cooling of the housing market because there are fewer jobs available. I mean, not the jobs, it's the jobs market, not the housing market, which is a good sign for the Fed. So far you're getting mixed signals, right? So on one thing, you're getting house prices going up, the job market's coming down. Let's see what else happened the rest of the week here. So what else did we look at here? ADP numbers came out on Wednesday. And they showed that the jobs added 193,000 jobs. Is that correct, Alan?
That's correct. And I think the expectation was only 185,000.
Yep.
So the job market here is strong. It's showing increase in jobs, whereas they were expecting less. So this whole government Doge layoff thing still hasn't factored in. We're not seeing that whole thing. I'm ready. I know you're ready to jump in with something.
Well, because I haven't seen any true fallout yet. This is more in the uncovering phase. I mean, if I'm being objective here. And I think a lot of people were smart enough to be preemptive, understanding that there's a lot of waste and spillage and leakage, that have started to look for other opportunities, which I think, just from a brain drain perspective versus working in a bureaucratic environment, are now going to put their mind to probably more creative things that they were unsure of and stuff like that. So, I mean, overall, if you're paying people to do a job that's monotonous and you figure that might be a waste, then, cut it. But I don't think Doge has ultimately done more damage than just a perception of what it's going to do. I would love to see.
Well, that's
the
the problem.
Of
It's the perception. That consumer confidence number is right there, because the perception, and you talked to Alan about it, and he'll go on our rant about how bad Doge is because it's the perception.
That's because he lives in California right now.
Well, I'd actually really like to, because the ADP employment report breaks down like which jobs did well and which jobs, did not do well. And, the establishment sizes, I mean, there was job increases in small, medium, and large businesses. But the biggest fall off, the biggest one, was education and health services. They lost 23,000 jobs. And the biggest increase was leisure and hospitality. So it looks like a flight, and this is just my opinion, from more skilled labor to less skilled labor. And I'm not sure why that
but
would
I
be.
think it's a seasonal thing too, because you're getting ready for people to start traveling again. The summer times are coming, so these leisure and hospitality places tend to
that's very
hire
accurate.
more. So I
That's
think
true.
that's a little bit skewed. But really, what's interesting in this data is the small and medium-sized companies really showed the most robust gains in this whole thing. So your larger company, Fortune 500s, aren't really hiring. They're not really seeing jobs here. It's more of the smaller and medium, which is driving the economy, which is good because that's really our clientele. That's MBank's clientele. Your small and medium companies, entrepreneurs who are growing, who
Right.
are, having cash flow and are able to sustain and push through this type of market. That's exactly our clientele that we speak to because our bank statement loan volume increased tremendously over the last, I would say, quarter, just because of the surge that we're seeing. People want to get into homes, and they're seeing that. It was clear correlation. Now that you break down these numbers, that's exactly what it is. You're seeing these small, medium-sized entrepreneurs just kicking right in.
If you want to historically look at any sort of thriving economy, it starts from the small to medium-sized businesses. They ultimately all get acquired by the larger ones, but that's what's the backbone of the everyday company. You want people to know that they can enter the job market, build something, work with their two hands, put in the grit, and build that. I mean, that in itself is an incredible stat. I don't know about heading towards a recession. I think they're trying to, push rates down a little bit to make things a little more affordable, which would be, I think, amazing for everybody all around, every market that you can possibly mention. But like looking at the stock market, it's after the Liberation Day, you're looking at the largest increases in quite some time.
And people are still moving to better their career,
Right.
the life for their children. So people are still moving.
And they're working remotely. We're in the gig economy.
They are still working remotely. You're right about that.
I don't know how much that's going to last. I mean,
Yeah.
the gig economy, yeah, but working remotely. Look what Jamie Dimon said. He went off on a huge rant like a month and a half ago about how anyone who works from home, it's completely killing the economy, killing businesses because there's no stimulation, there's no interaction, there's no growing your mind, there's nothing. He's like, I'm not a babysitter. I'm not going to sit and worry and hope that they're doing the right thing. He's like, when I'm sitting with people here and we're interacting, that's when things happen.
Warren Buffett said the same exact thing that you just said.
Look, I don't know about you guys. For me, when I'm at home, I can't nearly be as productive as I am in the office.
No.
I come to the office to be able to be in the office and be around like minds and work. And I know that that's a place where I go to get work done.
Yeah.
However,
100%.
And we like
you too?
you. Yeah, we like you.
I heard you chirping me before. I heard you chirping me before I got into the podcast.
They don't like me at home, so I like to come here.
Oh, you don't like me. They don't like you at home. That part I can believe. So the flip side of that coin, though, when I talk about the gig economy, I'm talking about the fact that as AI and all these other tools are going to come into place, you don't have to.
Ellen, we're going right back to AI.
But if we don't talk about AI, all the rest of us dinosaurs, and we don't reestablish the new norm where if you don't execute on anything, like information is plentiful, you're done in the water. But if you're a mind that can use the tools around you, regardless of where you're sitting, and be remote with it, new businesses are going to spring up. And I'm saying through the younger generation, I think you're going to see like 10 and 12 and 13-year-old entrepreneurs that are just going to kill it because the wealth of knowledge, the experience that we give them, they can now access at their fingertips. So now what you're looking at is the execution, right? You need high agency, as one of my friends told me, and that's absolutely true. So they can outsource the thinking, the intelligence, and then they can execute based on the information that's given to them. And you're going to see more and more people working remotely because they don't need to be sitting in an office, or they might want to be sitting in an office. So I think we're watching this is the printing press all over again.
I'll tell you something. The truth, AI helps me so much with the data research that we do.
Of course,
it's light years. It would take me hours to gather all this information, and it happens within minutes. And then now you have to obviously digest and look at all of the findings and go through the articles. But still, just that initial onset, it's tremendous.
It's a job.
Well, here's something that was recently tax season. We're around tax season. How stupid I felt. I was, I'm not the most organized guy. And my buddy says to me, "Where do you keep most of your receipts?" I guess I get them emailed to me. He goes, "Well, tell Google to go filter through all of your emails to get all your receipts."
Yeah, I
it.
just realized
Used
you could
AI.
connect all of
They
your
did the whole
your
thing,
accounts
put
to
all
the thing.
everything together. Bam, receipts.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. All right,
It's awesome.
so let's move on here. The GDP numbers came out, and we grew at an annual of 2.1%, which is off. So that's for Q1, sorry, and Q4 of last year was 2.8%. So that's a slowdown, and that's again, it's now not inflationary. You're looking at now going towards recessionary. So you're getting mixed numbers where one is here, then one works out. So it's a mixed bag. But the GDP is a concern because the tariffs still didn't come into effect in this number. So we really don't know how bad the GDP will. And Alan, what's a recession? How many quarters of negative GDP plus
That's 2
inflation?
quarters.
So your inflationary numbers are still there. Your job growth.
I'm going to jump in. I'm so sorry. I just pulled up the Bureau of Economic Analysis. The U.S. Department of Commerce prints the reports. Their current release, which the figures that you may be looking at might be a little outdated. The current release that came out 2 days ago shows that the GDP decreased at an annual rate of 0.3% in the first quarter. So their estimate is actually down 2.7% from Q4 in 2024. Instead of an increase of 2.4, we're looking at a decrease of 0.3%.
So what's
the
the
decrease in
annualized?
GDP
What's the annualized number though? Do you have the annualized?
What do you mean by annualized for 2024?
Yeah, the annualized rate is the 2.1. That's what I was referring to. It did come down for that first Q1, but needless to say, we're negative. That's really the bottom line, and that's concerning because then you start talking about recession, you start talking about stagflation, and that's something that we really need.
So what do you do if you're the Fed? You've got inflationary pressures one way, you got recession going the other way. What do you do?
They can't do anything. They have to wait. I don't think. I mean, I personally, they're meeting this week on the 7th, 6th and 7th. They'll announce they're going to announce the thing on the 7th.
What's your call?
I highly doubt they do anything. I think they're going to stay put.
Jason?
I think
Really?
so. Yeah, I don't think we're going to really see anything till the fourth quarter. That's
25 basis points down.
You're calling 25 basis
It
down?
has to.
Wait. What date is the 25 basis points down from
He's
Ronan?
calling it on the 7th of May.
On the
Time
7th of...
Yeah, 25
May.
basis points down.
Next week.
I think June.
I remember.
I think June you have a better shot. I don't think.
I don't see how they don't do that. I
I
don't
gotta
see how they
say,
don't do
we
it.
had a podcast episode. We had a podcast episode on the 22nd, and I wrote down Ronan as a half-point cut in June.
All right.
So I'm still holding
look,
you to that.
I'm
You're still
not.
being held.
I'm not a fortune teller. We're constantly reading the data here, and then we're talking about it. And then one thing we have unique in this room is that we got our fingers on the pulse. So we're talking to people, and what people are telling you is what's actually driving the market, right? And then you have the geopolitical factors, and you have the economic factors. I don't possibly see that a move is not off the table. Because something somewhere has to change. Stagflation is worse than anything. You want to see movement and then adjust, as opposed to just waiting to see what the fallout is of something negative. The positive, no one's going to say, oh, yeah, well, that's okay. It was a little too good this quarter. We're going to have to change things up.
Right.
Right. I just don't see how you don't get some sort of artificial. You know what? I go 50 basis points. Forget
Whoa,
it. I take
50.
Wow.
Sticking to the
We're-
I was going to take
I
that
love
back.
it.
He's sticking it to the man. He's going 50
I'm going
basis
50
points.
basis points. Final offer.
Let me write that down in the big book. Hold on.
That's right. That's right.
I
Well,
bet
got
you
a question
lunch.
for you guys about the GDP. So if we see these numbers and we saw the consumer index, their sentiment, do you guys see that in your own circles? Like, is it the same negativity in your circles, or are people chomping at the bit?
Listen, I went out to dinner last night, and when I tell you, and even Wednesday night when I was with Ziv, kosher food is expensive.
Oh my God.
Expensive. And it was packed. It was packed. We went out, we were sitting outside. We sat at 9:00. And when I tell you, it was like a club, bumping music, whatever. And it was expensive. And just Ziv and I, 2 people on Wednesday, it cost us $225.
Yeah, food's expensive. Very expensive.
So, I mean, it's not, I don't know. I'm not seeing it. People are spending, people are doing, but maybe other areas obviously are getting affected that obviously because of these numbers, we're not seeing it where we are.
Well, it's also demographics, right? And different people doing different things, and you're going to speak to different age demographics. I'm sure you're going to hear different results.
What are you seeing in California?
In California, I mean, I haven't seen as much. The reason I ask, I haven't seen as much doom and gloom as the reports are telling me. You know what I mean? Like, I don't see that sentiment here. Gas prices are only slightly up. Like, my electric bill came in cheaper, and I don't know. You know,
Gas
I
prices.
get that it's
You're in
negative
California,
sentiment.
aren't you? Isn't it like against the law to drive a gas car? Don't you have to have a Tesla?
That's what I'm saying. It's supposed to be $12 a gallon, but it's only, you know, it's only like 4.5. And I'm used to higher figures. And so I was curious because I don't see as much negativity as I read.
Wait, did you say $12 a gallon?
No, means they're predicting it to go crazy, but it's like 4.5.
Right.
At one point, it was like at 8. I remember when I was visiting one gas station in Beverly Hills, and I don't even understand. It was like $8, and it's packed. If you drove 3 minutes down the block, it was like $6. But the $8 one was packed. The $6 one was whatever.
Because they had full serve.
$3.75 here?
No, not full service.
No full serve.
No, you have to pump your own gas.
It's $3.75 in Florida, right?
No, right now it's like $3.10. I got it
Yeah,
for $3.10
okay. I have it.
yesterday.
$3.49 super unleaded at Costco.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's insane.
All right, so let's move on here, Alan. The jobless claims, they just came out. The BLS numbers came out today. What did we see with the BLS numbers?
You want to roll, please?
Yeah, the initial jobless claims came in at 225,000 for the week ending April 26th, which is a decrease of $5,000 from the previous week's revised level.
5,000
So,
jobs, yeah. So again,
Yeah.
the unemployment figures, we had fewer claims than expected. Again, this is all positive jobs numbers. You know, you would think that things are worse and not, but really no, you're getting positive. So that's the Fed has mixed signals. So it's very hard to increase when you're seeing consumer spending go up. You're seeing all of these factors go in. Jobs are strong. They're robust. You still have wage growth. How are you gonna justify?
Okay.
You have inflationary factors. How are you going to justify dropping 50 basis points?
So when you look at the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, is that the same thing in the States? That's what they call it in Canada, right? The
Yeah.
CPI.
PPI is producers, wholesale. CPI is the consumer.
Right. You don't have the same weighted average to eggs as you do to real estate, for example.
No, but if you strip out food and energy, you still get it, and it's still rising with the strip out of the food and energy. So that's where they really look at is when you strip out the food and energy because of those skews. And even with that, it's still rising. So I would love for it to be true. Nothing more than that. But
I'm going to double down on it because even if you do strip those things out, okay, what you're looking at is a thriving economy by just the job numbers, okay, but still a lack of affordability, right? And I know if you're trying to drive inflation down, you're raising rates, but a little bit of inflation is what every single economy needs, right? You need to have that upward pressure. But the key factors that come down to the everyday consumer are still out of reach. Specifically, the largest expense the largest expense is still housing. And I think that that's what's going to drive the markets. And then in turn, you're going to get more developers getting into the game because now they can sell more of their product. And in turn, you're going to create a larger supply. And I don't see how that doesn't stimulate the market. Plus, I think there's something to do with appeasing Trump a little bit because whenever rates go down a little bit, paying down that debt becomes a little bit cheaper.
we'll see. But you know what's interesting? Again, I'm going to stress on this. Throughout all of this, you see the self-employed marketplace, that small to medium-sized business owner, those contractors, those are the ones that we cater to. They're thriving right now.
Agreed.
And that's the opportunity. That's the silver lining in what we're looking at here. I mean, as a bank owner, when you look at this opportunity, house prices are still going up and people aren't realizing 22 consecutive quarters of an increase. That's a trend. It's no longer a fluke. It is a trend. And you know what? We're seeing a surge in bank statement, 1099 type of DSCR type of loans, and we do all of them. And literally that one clip that Ziv did with me, I can tell you we received 15 phone calls.
Amazing.
And I didn't even understand. And they're like, oh yeah. And my cousins are starting to text me. Oh yeah, I saw you on Ziv the Watch Guy. But these are all small to medium-sized business owners. One guy has a staffing agency. And he's like, listen, if I could find more people, He doesn't do high-end lawyers and stuff. He does cleaning companies, janitorial services, office, this type of stuff. And he's doing 125,000 a week. A week.
I can tell you that there's a labor shortage. So in my wife's space, in the autism and behavioral space, the only reason we can't grow faster is because we can't hire fast enough. Every child needs support, and you need to hire a qualified support person. And she spends half of her time interviewing. So it's there.
And why is that? Are they not getting the proper training and schooling, so they can't take on that position? Where does that actually start from? Or do they have the right schooling and they just don't want to take the job? They want something a little bit less, like maybe the entertainment business or the service industry business. Like,
that's a great question. It's kind of twofold. The way she conducts herself is very nuanced and very play-based approach, and you can't learn in school. You need to have, some character traits, and then those character traits need to be refined through an analytical, systematic process. So school, and we've talked about this multiple times, doesn't really prepare them for what it's like to deal with a real-life example of somebody who needs some support if they're on the spectrum.
Okay.
But the other thing that you'll find is, of her interviews, I'd say 20% ghost. They just don't even show up.
Yeah.
Right. And the best part about it is, of those ghosters, you probably get like a 50%. Oh, sorry, I missed it. And can we do this again? No. Right. So jobs are there. The market is thriving as a whole. It's not doom and gloom the way we see things. I mean, you're never going to get it right. I don't know what right looks like, but if you want to turn around to everybody that needs to or wants to own a home, they got one of two choices. You're either going to purchase or you're going to rent. And we see the same pressures on rentals as they seem with prices. As prices go up, as carrying costs go up, rentals need to go up, because nobody that's going to DSCR isn't going to, at least, well, they don't qualify, right? I mean, if you don't get that loan to fall within the parameters of carrying, and so you got to live somewhere, right?
No, 100%. I mean, again, I can tell you right now, today I got a call. I just sold a property. I have to buy properties. I need to DSCR them. I don't want to show my income. And I asked him why. He said, because I have a restaurant and I don't show tax returns. I said, it's okay. I'll use your bank statements. You can get a better rate and you can get better terms. And because he didn't want to put as much money down that you needed 25% down for a DSCR commonly, where I tell him you can put 20% or 15% and buy using a bank statement. He said, you can use my gross deposits for a restaurant. I said, yeah.
I don't know why I haven't probed you on this before. Bank statement loans, we hear bank statements. You basically don't have to carry a salary in order to qualify, as long as you got a cash flow. But what does that analysis actually look like in practice? I'm bringing you, 2 years worth of bank statements?
12 months worth of business bank statements.
What's your analysis?
We look at what are quantified as business deposits, and straight baseline, we take a 50%. So if you bring in 100,000 a month, we're using 50,000. Yeah.
Okay. What about the expenses?
We still look at the expenses. We want to make sure they're not completely crazy, but we really don't factor it in per se, because it's a cost of doing your business. Because at the end of the day, that cash flow is consistently coming in.
So are you expecting them to pay the mortgage out of their business?
No, not necessarily. They don't have to pay it out of their business, but that's their main income that's going to obviously facilitate for them to pay.
But that's not what I'm asking. And I'm going to probe you on it further. And again, I've got my Canadian hat on. Okay. If you own a primary residence, you have to take primary income that is taxed at the
No, we don't ask them to take down the money. We don't ask them to pull it down into a salary into their personal account.
But can an individual pay out of their business their mortgage? Really?
100%.
Without any tax hit?
Listen, that's an accounting question, but you can pay your mortgage from your business, whether your accountant looks at it as that's your income and they're going to hit you with that income anyways, or however they do that. That's really an accounting question. But for all intents and purposes, we don't care where the money comes from. And you don't, some people say, do I have to take it into my personal name? No. That income is your income. Whether you take it down to your personal name or whatever, That's none of my business.
So bank statements, 12 months, 50% of gross revenues
yeah.
you look at, and then what happens?
That's it. That's your baseline income, and then you qualify off of that. As long as you meet the 50% debt to income ratio, you're fine.
Wow.
So 95% of people.
This information doesn't go out enough,
No.
right?
And also for 1099 people, we use 90% of the gross 1099. So if you get a 1099 for $200,000, we'll use $180,000 as your baseline income and divide that by 12.
Can you
We'll
repeat
hit you.
that?
So if you get a $200,000 1099 for 2024,
1099 being an independent contractor.
correct.
Okay.
Typically, the way the banks do it, they make you file your tax returns and they qualify you on the net after
Right.
you expense everything out.
Right.
We don't make you file your tax returns. We take 90% of your 1099. So if it's 200,000, we take 180,000 as your baseline.
Gotcha.
And we'll use, we're in what, May now? We'll use 4 months of bank statements just to quantify that you're still on pace making the same money. You can get the 1099 to a corporation or to your personal name. It doesn't make a difference to me as long as you get the 1099. And the DSCR, I don't look at any of that stuff. All I look at is the rental income of the property.
Right.
So simple, straightforward. So there's opportunity. Now is really the time where you have to jump in and take advantage of it. Cash out refinances, all the same. All right, so we're going to wrap up real quick. Fed meeting is coming up next week. You're thinking 50 basis point
I'm going
cut.
to stick to it. Might as well. I mean, I'm stubborn enough.
What about you, sir?
Not moving.
What about you, Alan?
Let's say cutting an eighth.
An eighth.
Or sorry,
Ooh.
not an
That's
eighth.
so
I'm
random.
sorry.
That's it, Alan.
No,
you're
yeah, an eighth. I'm
you're
gonna
in
stick with the eighth.
California.
No. I'm done. I'm
Okay,
sticking
an
with the
eighth.
That's it. I'm signing up.
We're, I believe it's staying like this. If anything, they may consider in June, depending really on what the numbers come out. All right, so that was great. That was the weekly roundup. Let's do our crazy client as the funding of the week because this was a real doozy.
This
So-
is crazy. So we had a client who purchased a home on the Colorado River, which confusingly enough is the border between California and Arizona. There's no Colorado involved here. And on the Arizona side of the river, there was a ton of investment properties, all short-term rental Airbnb properties. And he bought on the California side of the river, which was not developed. And what he did was he invested hundreds of thousands of dollars into this multi-unit property to raise the value to match the Arizona side. And he was kind of thinking, I could be the guy who comes in and creates this market on the California side of the river.
He actually spent $1 million on the upgrade, not 100,000. He spent $1 million.
Sorry, my bad, missed a zero. Point is, the appraiser gets there and the appraiser goes, I can't use comps from across the river. They're in Arizona.
And the
so his
crazy is he
property
told us from the
Mhm.
beginning, oh, the property is going to be worth $2.5 million. And literally, when the appraiser called, he's comparing Arizona side. The property came in at $1.2 million.
Oof.
Yeah.
So he completely overbuilt the whole area. It's like when MC Hammer bought in Compton or Inglewood, wherever it was back in the day. He had gold fixtures, whatever. He spent $4 or $5 million on a house, and it sold for $600,000-$700,000 when he went bankrupt. So we were doing a DSCR loan, and unfortunately, he ended up having to bring cash to the table to pay off the hard money lender. It was really,
Messy.
it was messy. It took us about 60 days to close it just because of the back and forth, and we contested the value, we contested the rentals, and then the client brought in, comps, provided comps to the appraiser, and we went back and forth with that. And most lenders don't do that. We will. We'll fight the fight. We're going to present what it is, and then obviously it's still up to the appraiser to do it. Where most lenders say, okay, this is it. They really won't contest the value. And then once we get that part, then title comes in and says, wait a minute, we don't have permits fully signed off on, and we don't have a completion.
Oh my God. No CFO?
He did, but there were still open permits somehow, which was the craziest thing. So we had to deal with that and go back and forth with title. I mean, we were knee deep in it. Alan was like, forget it. And we were dealing day in, day out. But thank God it did close ultimately, and the client was so appreciative because he's in hard money, and where he thought he was, he found the gold rush. What was it? He thought he found the new territory, and he's going to dominate the market because he's going to create that same model across the river.
Well, now he's technically setting the tone. So, I mean, if he wants to do it now going forward, he's the comp.
Yeah, but he has to now cut all his high-end
absolutely.
furnishings and high-end fixtures.
Bring it back to a reality.
Where is he going to find a 50% lift? He's got a $1.3 million shortfall.
Well, they always say you got to build the
It's
middle-class neighborhood before you build the high-end neighborhood. That's rule of thumb.
Yeah, you never want to be the first one.
The builder right here, the middle class before you build the high end.
Yep. Otherwise, there is no high end. You need a baseline.
Yeah, absolutely.
The middle class neighborhood becomes the baseline. When your comp is a tree and a pond, that doesn't work.
I never heard that. Smart.
Anyways, thank you all. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a great week.
Yes.
All the way up.
All the way.
All the way up.